Welcome into episode 54 of the Josh Hendrickson Show here on MPW Digital. I'm Neal McCready, joined by Josh Hendrickson. He's the chair of economics at the University of Mississippi, more affectionately known as Ole Miss. Josh, how are you, sir?
Doing well.
It is Wednesday, March the 18th. I'll be honest, there was a point Saturday afternoon that I thought, I don't think we're going to do the Josh Hendrickson Show on Wednesday. I'm going to be in Portland. At no point before sometime in the late second half of Saturday's semifinal between Arkansas and Ole Miss did I even look to see where the tournament was this year. No idea. I pulled up sites, and I said, which one would be the worst one to try to get to? And it was Portland. And I said, headed to Portland. Really thought for a moment. And actually it got into a point where I was starting to think about, how do you even put this story into context, right? Because for weeks I'd written, hey, if you actually think this is possible, I'd basically made fun of anybody optimistic enough to think that it was possible. And there they were in overtime of the semifinal with Florida, the team that Ole Miss could play 100 times and never beat, eliminated by Vanderbilt, the team that I'd seen Ole Miss play to the wire twice. And I was like, son of a bitch, this might happen. But it didn't. It would have been fun. I love the tournament. People were like, who are you for? And I'm like, well, I'm not for anybody. My job is not to be for anybody. But I guess if I'm for someone, I'm for Ole Miss because that's my ticket to the tournament. And it would have been pretty crazy. This time next week, Major League Baseball opens. Looks like our Cubs avoided a bullet on earlier in the week when Seiya Suzuki tried to steal a base and hurt his knee. Sounds like it's not serious. I immediately saw it and said, well, he tore everything. I don't know about you. I'm the most negative. I'm kind of glad I don't have a lot of sports fandom, honestly, because I'm very pessimistic as a fan, naturally. Maybe this is the Cub thing in me. But when I saw him get up and limp, I said, oh, well, he's done. He's finished. He tore everything up. And I literally yesterday when the news came out that it was just a minor thing and that it's possible, not likely, but possible that he opens the season playing, I was just floored, stunned, really.
I did not watch the World Baseball Classic at all. I honestly forgot about it for a long period of time. But one of the reasons I'm never interested in it is I just don't think that if I watch it, I can enjoy it because I'm just going to be sitting there going, which one of these guys is going to get injured and ruin their team's season like right now?
Yep.
And for what? For this made up tournament that we had. And I know this is dumb. Like I know other sports do this, but like, I don't know. I think I've like reached an age where like if there is a sport that has existed, if there's like a league that has existed since before I was born and they are not doing anything like the World Baseball Classic, like when I was born.
Yeah.
Right. And then they just start doing it where I'm just like, this is not a thing. It's something in my brain that's just like, no, it's like, I still expect like the World Baseball Classic one year. They're just like, we're not going to do it anymore.
Yeah. You're exactly like me. I told Chase that this morning and he was floored that I was so surprised last night at some of the animus towards the American team for losing. And I was like, wait, you guys took this seriously? This mattered? This mattered to you? Because to me, it's like the Pro Bowl, right?
Yes, that's a good analogy.
I don't, maybe I'm for the NFC, but like if the NFC loses to the AFC, I'm over it like that. Done. I'd never, any more than if the NFC were to win by 4 touchdowns, I'm not celebrating. It didn't matter. It was an exhibition. It's the NBA All-Star game. You don't really pick a favorite team. You just watch guys run up and down the floor.
Well, I think this is the thing is that sports is fundamentally about emotional investment. And I just can't get emotionally invested in the World Baseball Classic. I just don't care. I mean, people were saying to me, oh, you should watch it. This is the best year.
Yeah.
That it's, like the crowds are big, they're loud, like people are into it, like the games like have a playoff feel to them, all these kinds of things. And I'm like,
and it did sound like one. It just didn't feel like one.
And I'm just like, I just don't care. Like I know that sounds terrible, but I don't.
No,
it doesn't matter.
I'm actually glad to hear someone else say it because last night the Cubs' Daniel Palencia closed it out for Venezuela. And in the ninth inning, he was fighting back emotions. He was literally tearing up as he pitched. And I just looked at it like, what's going on? Like, why do you feel this way? Please don't get hurt. I mean, that mainly was what I was thinking. I didn't have any patriotic feeling in it. It was completely, I don't want him to get hurt or to do something where he blows this lead and the Americans win and it becomes this thing in his head.
Yes.
Like, no, just go dominate. Let's beat the Cardinals.
Well, and that's the other hard thing. I mean, I don't know. Maybe this is, I mean, I don't know how people in other sports handle this kind of a thing, but it's just like, it doesn't really matter to me. And it's also not like even like the Olympics, like most Olympic sports I don't care about, but like if I watch the Olympics, I root for the United States. But I think like the World Baseball Classic is this weird thing, and maybe soccer, like maybe like huge soccer fans are like this too, where like it's hard to separate the fact that like you root for a team every year, and that team has players that are represented on all these different teams.
Yeah.
And so when a guy that's played for the Cubs for years or something is in the game, but they're playing for Venezuela, like I just find myself rooting for the guy.
Yeah.
And just not caring about the team.
Yeah.
And it's just like,
exactly.
It's like, well, and also it's just like there are certain baseball players that you just enjoy watching. And I just find that like if I watch something like the World Baseball Classic, I just root for that guy. And it doesn't matter what team he's on.
I'm going to admit this out loud finally. When the U.S. played Canada in basketball and the Canadian team had Shea Gilgeous-Alexander and Lou Dort on it, I was for Canada. I wanted Lou and Shea to win. I screw the Americans, man. I mean, because the Americans to me are like, that was like LeBron and all these cats that I spend the year hating. I don't care what flag's on you right now. I want Shea to win. And I told somebody that, and they looked at me like, I can't believe you'd admit that out loud. And I'm like, I'm just telling you, I cheered for Shea.
Well, but even with that, like even in the Olympics, like, okay, the dream team was like a once in a lifetime kind of thing.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And now we just like, people get mad at me about this too, because I can't get into when the Summer Olympics roll around and it's basketball. I can't get into the basketball because, I mean, it's a little bit better now because it's become more competitive, but like
the European teams are better.
But I just look at the U.S. team and I'm just like, this is a joke. Like we just have an all-star team.
Yeah.
Like we just took like the Western Conference all-stars. We just sent them to the Olympics. And it's like, and especially when they're playing, like, I mean, when they're playing a team
like Ghana,
yes, exactly.
I mean,
exactly. It's just like, oh, come on. Like, this is not even fair. Like, what are we doing?
Yeah. The basketball's gotten better because the French team's great. The Serbian team is great. There's some really good teams. But yeah, and look, I give the Dream Team credit. If you go back and really study that, when they went over in 92, it was such a story. And European kids were so excited about it that it actually absolutely grew the game internationally. Basketball, no question. And Miami was packed last night. And you watched the Venezuelan players, they were into it. They really wanted to win. So did the American players. Maybe you and I are just on the outside. Maybe we're missing something. But I think your description's a good one. The Olympics, I can get into the Olympics because I don't remember life before the Olympics.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
In 1980, I was 10. And when we beat the Russians, even though I really didn't understand the rules to hockey, I knew it was a really big deal. It was very similar to when Teddy Atlas and Kevin Sullivan wrestled against Ivan Khrushchev and Nikita Koloff. And I've told this story before when Teddy Atlas's arm was broken because they had the Russians had the Russian sickle. That was their move where they put the arm behind the back and just kept jerking on it and jumping on it and stuff. And they broke Teddy Atlas's arm, and my little brother Tim started crying. Ever since then, you wanted to beat the Russians.
Yeah.
I think Nikita Koloff was probably from Iowa, but still, it worked, right? But the Olympics mattered, and this still, even though it's not new, it feels really new, and I just haven't been able to get into it. All right, let's get into some other stuff. I got some questions. Got an email. I sent you the email, so you had time to see this. Let me find it. All right, it's from Ben Hamrick. He says, big fan of the show. Thank you, Ben. He said, I wanted to get y'all's thoughts on a couple of topics, and then he has 5. Ben, a couple's 2. But that's okay. It's okay. I'm going to start with sports. We'll get out of sports. Yeah. We'll do sports, and then we'll go to the other stuff. Yeah. He says he's a Braves fan. He says, why should I even pay attention this year to the baseball season? It's highly likely that there will be a lockout next year. For this year in the National League East, the Braves payroll is $136 million behind the Mets, $81 million behind the Phillies. And if you compare versus the Dodgers, the Braves are $162 million behind. So why should he care?
Well, I mean, I think, I think this question just kind of gets at what the problem that baseball is going to have here pretty quick. And that is that the spending seems out of control in a way that it's not necessarily in other sports, because other sports have,
they either have caps or they have tax luxury tax structures that make spending above a certain apron or above a second apron in the NBA's case very punitive, where 2 things. 1, if you do it, you only do it for a year. Mm-hmm. You don't do it repeatedly, and unless you're the Lakers. And then 2, it just incentivizes ownership to get under the cap, because the tax you're paying sometimes, 50 cents or more on the dollar, on every dollar over the cap. So if you're 100 over the cap, you pay 150 in taxes, which most ownership doesn't want to do.
Yeah, and I think this is the issue, is that baseball has to get this fixed. The players' union is not going to go for that. But it's becoming an issue, because it's getting to the point where you look at these teams and you just think, look, there are just certain teams that are never going to compete. Like the Pirates, like they're never going to compete. They can put together a season here or there, right? Like they can develop a great farm system. They can have, if they do it right, they can bring up a lot of young guys. They can be good for a couple of years, maybe trade away a few guys for some veterans and make a run, and then that's it.
Yep.
And
it's like the Pirates are a great example right now. They're on a clock with Paul Skeens, mm-hmm. In much the same way the Tigers run a clock, and the clock is about to expire on Tarek Skubal, where the Pirates have Paul Skeens for 6 seasons. And at the end of 6 seasons, their odds of keeping him are virtually nil.
Well, and this is the thing, is that with the Tigers can't afford to keep Skubal. Like they can't afford to keep him. He's going to get a ridiculous amount of money from like the Yankees or the Dodgers. And the Tigers can't afford it. And so it's one of those things where, unless you are a fan of like a handful of teams, it's getting hard to stay invested in your team. And, that's like, if you think about the things that we complain about the Cubs, for example, is like what we usually complain about is like, hey, you are one of these teams who can afford things. So like, why aren't you out there spending? That's like, because that's always our frustration, is like they always seem to come in like second or third for every free agent, because they're unwilling to go above a certain dollar figure, and then the other teams do. And on the one hand, like I admire them, right, for sticking with their model, right, and for saying like, nope, that person is not worth this much, like we're not going to pay them that much. But on the other hand, it's like, okay, but you do understand that if you continue to do this, you have much shorter windows to compete. You have to get everything right, because you don't have this, like, you're not going out and signing this like superstar player to kind of carry the team. And it's getting to the point where there are just too many teams that really can't compete.
Yeah.
And because of that, I mean, that's why we're headed for a work stoppage. And then that's why it also gets hard to invest in these things. Now, the one thing that I will say is that baseball, I don't know, I need to look at the data on this. Baseball just seems much younger than it used to be, right? Like it seems like if you were to compare baseball today to like baseball, I don't know, 40 years ago, it just seems like the average age of the player is younger, right? Like people aren't, my impression of sort of what's happening is that people aren't keeping the veteran guy around as long if there is a cheaper, younger guy that they can bring up that can put up the same numbers. So you used to have guys that were like career, like 250 hitters, who didn't even really get on base. But, they played decent defense and like you could put them in like the 7th or 8th spot in the lineup and it was a good veteran presence for you. And I just think that now we have teams that are kind of like, yeah, but I would have to pay that guy a bunch of money, and instead I could just like bring somebody up from AAA who can put up those same numbers and play the same defense.
All right, I'm asking for this. The average age of a Major League Baseball player today is 29.3 years, which is notably higher than the average in the mid-1980s. Specifically, I'm stunned. Specifically, 40 years ago in 1986, when you and I were teenagers, the average age was roughly 28 years old.
That surprises me.
Players are debuting at an older age now. Their average debut age is 25.2. Average pitcher is 29.5. The average overall player is 29.3. Right now, the average pitching age is 29.5. It's the oldest in baseball history outside of the World War II era.
Maybe they just seemed older because I was young.
Could be. I'm kind of stunned. The Dodgers entered the 2025 season with the league's oldest roster at an average age of 31.48 years. Yeah.
No, but I think that it's like
kind of surprised.
Yeah, that surprises me. I don't know. It's just there's too many teams that can't that can't really compete, and I mean, to some extent, if you have like a really well run front office, like you can circumvent some of those things, but it kind of depends on who you are, and then it depends on this margin of error. And so until this gets resolved, like I don't know how you're going to have this. I mean, you're always going to have issues, right? Like every league has this. Like you're a Thunder fan, like the Oklahoma City Thunder, they have to be a well-run organization to compete with the Lakers. Like they just have to be.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Or the Lakers just have to be a poorly run organization or something like, like one of the two has to be the case because one is just going to have more resources. But I just don't like it.
You have to evaluate for the Thunder or the Grizzlies or the Pelicans or the Hornets or the Pacers or some of the smaller market teams to win. They have to evaluate incredibly well. They have to be incredibly efficient with the decisions that they make regarding who they extend, who they don't, because as you extend, the contracts get bigger, which reduces your margin for error. They have to be very frugal in free agency. If you make a free agent acquisition and it's a bad one, you pay for it more than a big market team would, just because of the way the rules work. But unlike baseball, the way that the deals in basketball are set up, a team like the Thunder, for example, who have one superstar and two other basically star-level players, Jalen Williams and Chet Holmgren, they can keep all those players. There's a way to keep those players. The way that the salary structure works, you are rewarded and incentivized to keep players that you drafted for extended periods of time in their careers. I mean, the Thunder kept Kevin Durant for 9 years, and he walked away shockingly to some degree. I mean, there's a world where the Thunder keep Shai Gilgeous-Alexander for all of his career. I mean, and in football, what you have in the National Football League is you have a very strict salary cap that basically incentivizes parity with the way the draft works, the way that free agency works, the way that contracts work. Every team is always a couple of good drafts away from competing. The way they set up their schedule, everything in the NFL is set up to enhance parity, which, to your point about fan investment, it's much easier to be invested in a bad team because you can tell yourself and point out a million examples. This past season, the Patriots went to the Super Bowl. They were 4-12, 5-12, or 4-13 the year before, whatever it was. You can tell yourself, hey, we can do it. Maybe you're a little dreamy, but you can point to things when someone goes, man, you're crazy. You can go, well, they did it, and they did it, and they did it. And you don't have that in baseball now. In baseball, you have, if you're a Pirates fan, you're going to the games going, well, it's a beautiful park. It's proud history. And it is a beautiful park. If you ever had a chance to go to a game at PNC, I highly recommend it. It's great. And you can say, well, every fifth day we're going to pitch Skeens. And when the little boy says to his dad, well, he's going to leave for the Dodgers, isn't he? You could say, well, I mean, maybe not. Maybe it's going to be the Yankees. But
well, and you can see, I mean, here that Pittsburgh's actually probably like the best example. So if you want to get an idea of like, can Pittsburgh compete? Pittsburgh is one of these teams that actually has professional teams in multiple leagues. The Pittsburgh Penguins can compete in the NHL.
Yeah.
The Pittsburgh Steelers are competitive every year in the NFL.
Yeah, one of the most successful franchises in the NFL history.
And so when you say like, oh, well, they can't compete because they're a small market team, it's like, well, I mean, they can't compete in baseball, but they can compete in the other sports. The other thing too is, I think one thing that people miss is that, these contracts in baseball seem to be like just becoming insane, but they're even more insane when you consider the fact that these are guaranteed contracts. So in other words, if they had like the same rules as the NFL, to pay somebody like an equivalent NFL salary, you would have to pay them a lot more, right? Because if you're giving somebody $50 million a year to play baseball, okay, that $50 million is guaranteed. So they're getting the $50 million no matter what. Now, if they were getting paid $50 million a year, but only, some of that is guaranteed, then you're like, in terms of like the expected present value, it's much less than the guaranteed money. And so what would happen is like, in other words, part of the compensation that's going to baseball players is the guarantee. Okay.
Yeah.
And that's a non-monetary form of compensation. If you got rid of that under the current rules, they would actually be getting paid even more because it wouldn't be guaranteed. And so to compete for them, you would have to offer them a higher salary. Now, they might not collect it all, but you would have to promise them a higher salary to get them to come. And so the rules just seem completely unsustainable. They're getting out of control, and we're back at a point where it seems like, there's only a handful of teams that can compete. And if you get to that scenario, like that's where baseball is going to become really hard, because baseball is already a regional sport. And so if it's already a regional sport, like, how are some of these teams going to survive? Because if you're the Pirates, like, what's happening to the regional TV rights for the Pirates, relative to, the bigger market teams? Because if you're not good, there's like a diehard Pittsburgh Pirates fan base that, of people who are from the Pittsburgh area who are going to root for the Pirates no matter what, right?
Sure.
But the casual fan, the person who kind of like, might go to a game or two, every year, or like just kind of likes to watch it on TV. If you get to a point where people are like, we're never going to win, well, then who's watching? It's not just who's not going, like, it's not just, oh, the stadium's not full. It's that, like, who's actually even tuning in to the game, right? Like, other than as background noise.
All right, let's get to the other questions. Here we go. Big stuff here. How long do you think that the war in Iran can go on before Trump completely blows the midterms? Folks generally vote with their wallets, and if they can't afford summer trips and other activities because of all their extra funds are going towards gasoline, how will that change their vote? So we'll launch it. We launch into Iran. It started on this 2 weeks ago, and we're still going.
my I'm gonna, I think that by the time that we get to the midterms, this is all going to be over, and we're not going to be talking about it at all. We'll have moved on to something else.
Oh, okay.
I don't think it's going to last very long. I don't. I think we are in a we're we are like in this like news cycle where I feel like I live in a completely different like reality to what I am observing. Um, because the way that people talk about this conflict, I don't know. It's like it to me. It's like it's detached from reality on so many levels. And what I mean by that is that all of the comparisons here are to Iraq and Afghanistan, and that's understandable. But I don't think that that's what's going on at all. And so maybe what I should say is, okay, maybe what I'll do is I'll explain what I see happening, and then I'll explain how I think that this is going to play out, or at least what the administration is hoping. And then I will explain what I think would happen even if it doesn't go the way that they plan. And then I will explain what would be a colossal failure, and but one that I think that they know of. Okay.
All right.
Okay. So, what are they doing? Here's my perspective on what has happened. I think that if you think back to the sort of strategic bombing that was done by the United States and Israel a few months back, I think what was going on there is I think that Donald Trump was like, look, we're not making progress on these negotiations. So what we're going to do is we're going to show up and we are going to bomb these nuclear sites. And we're going to demonstrate to them that they have actually no air defense whatsoever against the United States. Like, we're just going to fly in. We're going to destroy this stuff. And we're going to basically say, do you see what we just did? You were defenseless against us. And it's just a strong show of force. And then I think it was, we're going to go back to the table and then we're going to negotiate now that you've seen what we're capable of. I think that that is what, I think that that is what they, I think that was what the plan was. I also think to the extent that Trump was talking about how this destroyed a lot of their nuclear capabilities, I think a lot of that was actually for Iran's benefit. I think what he was trying to do is create an off-ramp for them to negotiate and agree to like pause their program or something like that without losing face. So it'll look like, okay, we're not giving up on this. It's that you destroyed it. And so now we would have to start over. And so we don't, and so rather than starting over, we'll just take a pause and then, see how this goes. I think that that's more what that was about. And I think as evidence for this, if you recall, is that once there was kind of this sort of like ceasefire agreement, because really this was a conflict at that time between Israel and Iran, and then the United States got involved at the end and then kind of put a stop to it, right? So if you recall, after there was like a ceasefire agreement, there was this famous moment where Trump was like walking to the helicopter and a reporter was like, hey, there's supposed to be this ceasefire agreement and Israel just like, did another bombing or something like that. And Trump like looked at the camera and he said, yeah, that's because they don't know what the F they're doing. And he turned around and he got on the helicopter. Okay. And I think what that was is I think that Trump and Israel disagreed on what the path forward was. I think Trump thought, look, you guys are fighting this war. It's threatening to get bigger. They're not negotiating in good faith with us. What we will do is we will show like this decisive use of force. We will show that we are on your side. And by doing that, then Iran will come to the table and negotiate. And then, we can actually reach a deal. We can reach an agreement. And then the problem is then when they went back to Iran to have these talks, Iran basically acted like this never happened. Like they just act like complete lunatics where they were like, we're still going to do what we're going to do, whatever. And the reason that I think that is you can actually read the tweets of like Iranian officials and what they were saying, like when after that happened. And then when Trump said that they were going to negotiate, they were on social media that you can read in English, right? Saying essentially like, yeah. American presidents have been saying this forever. They don't actually do anything. We don't need to be concerned about this. They were basically dismissive of the United States. And if you read accounts of the private negotiations, they seemed completely defiant. Like, nope, we're going to keep doing this anyway, and you're just going to have to accept it, and essentially calling the United States bluff. And so I think when that happened, then I think Trump realized, okay, these people are never going to negotiate in good faith. And if they're not going to negotiate in good faith and they're just going to continue pursuing nuclear weapons, then we have no choice but to destroy that capability. But I think that they decided to do something more than just destroy that capability. I think that what their intention is to completely destroy their military capability, not just in terms of nuclear weapons, but even in terms of just conventional weapons. The objective is to destroy their missile, their missile defense, to destroy their ballistic missile system, to blow up the infrastructure that's used to create these drones. And at the same time, the coordination with Israel, because Israel has, it seems, much better intelligence on the ground there, was that this would be done in conjunction with taking out the heads of the regime.
Okay.
And so the idea seems to me that what you're doing is you have a very deliberate purpose. So this is not like Iraq. This is not like Afghanistan. This is not like Ukraine. We're not fighting a war for democracy or some other abstract noun. It's that, look, we're going to go in, we're going to do these strategic airstrikes. We're going to destroy their capability. We're going to destroy their military capability. Okay. And if you look at what has actually happened, like we seem to have done that, actually. Like we seem to have done that. So if you just look at the numbers, when the United States first attacked, Iran was launching missile attacks on all of its neighbors, just all of them. Like just basically trying to turn them against the United States, basically trying to get them to, because frankly, they don't have a lot of friends in the region. Okay. And so this was designed to like, it was basically a counteroffensive of chaos. It was, we're just going to start blowing stuff up in our region, and in addition to attacking Israel. And then when we do that, what's going to happen is that people in the region are going to lose their will to fight. They're going to go to the United States and say, hey, you got to end this, and it will end. The problem is that the United States destroyed a lot of these sites where they were launching these missiles from. They also destroyed stockpiles of these missiles. They, in addition to that, every time that Iran fires a missile, it reveals a location of a site that we might not have known about. And so what would happen is they would launch missiles from sites that maybe we weren't aware of, but now that they've revealed where they are, then you go attack that site. And so what has happened is like people talk about, oh yeah, there's all these missile attacks and drone attacks coming from Iran. But these missile attacks and drone attacks are down 80 to 90% from what they were in the early days. And it's only been a couple of weeks. And so what that tells me is that either Iran is holding back some of its stockpile of weapons, or it's running out. And the objective is not only to destroy the sites where they're launching these missiles and the missiles themselves, but also the manufacturing capacity that was being used to make these missiles. And so if you wipe out all of that stuff, then what's going to happen is they're not going to have the defense capability to continue fighting. And then at the same time, they're not going to be able to rebuild any of this stuff because you've destroyed the manufacturing capacity where it was coming from. And so I think that, okay, one possible objective here of the administration is we're just going to take out the leadership and we're going to take out all of their military capability. And once that's done, then we'll just say, good enough. Like it will take you decades to rebuild. And so you might You might be inclined to rebuild, but like just notice what we have done. Okay. I think that's one possible objective. I think the other thing that they're hoping for is that we talked about this last time. Iran has two different like militaries, right? Like they have, I think it's called like the Artesh or something like that, which is like their traditional long-term. That's like the military that's always existed, right? They're and that's sort of like the secular military that predates the existing Islamic regime, right? That was like, this is the same army that existed under the Shah and all that kind of stuff. So this is a continuation of the old army. But then there's this other separate army, which is like the Revolutionary Guard. Okay. And I think what the United States and Israel are hoping for is that if they can destroy enough of the Revolutionary Guard's leadership, one of two things is going to happen. At a certain point, somebody in the Revolutionary Guard is going to rise to power, and they're going to come to the U.S. and say, we can't do this anymore. Like, let's negotiate. Right. And then that's how it will end. I think the other thing that they're hoping for is that if they destroy the military capabilities, if you look at what they have attacked, they have specifically attacked sites that are affiliated with the Revolutionary Guard. They have not attacked any sites that are affiliated with the Artesh. What that tells me is that what they're doing is they're making now, in part, that could be because the Revolutionary Guard is where all the power resides in Iran. That's where the real military and intelligence power resides. But I think maybe what the hope is that if you destroy enough of the leadership and you destroy enough of their military capacity, then the Artesh might rise up and say, you know what, we're in charge now, right? And then they will kind of usher in a new regime in Iran. Okay, so in other words, I think that this is I do think that this is a very limited excursion, as the president likes to say. I think that this is, look, we're going to destroy these capabilities, and then we're going to go out, and once we've destroyed these capabilities, then that's it. Like, we're done. We're not going to go any further than that. And then I think that their hope is that they're going to be able to do that by I think their hope is that they're going to be able to do that. And in the process, that this will bring about like a regime change in Iran, where the regime is so weak that somebody else rises up and seizes power, and who is then more amenable to the United States, or at least more willing to negotiate with the United States towards, some kind of, proper relations. Now, where could this go wrong? Okay, well, this could go wrong in a lot of ways. Okay, like the telltale sign that things have gone wrong is like, if we send in ground troops, then this is a disaster. Because because we cannot do that. We can't we can't do it for a couple of reasons. Number one, this is not Iraq. Okay, Iran has 93 million people or something, like it's impossible. Iran is also something like 1/6 the size of the United States or something like that. So it's very large, right? Like, I mean, you think about how big the United States is, like 1/6 of the United States is still pretty big. So it would be very difficult. It would also be very difficult because, again, it would have a lot of the same problems that all these places in the Middle East have, which is that all of the conflicts are driven along ethnic lines, and there's lots of different ethnicities inside of Iran.
It mostly, Josh, is not tenable because the American people wouldn't sign off on it. The American people would revolt against this. I personally, and I'm pretty conservative, that'd be the end for me. I would be done. I don't think it's justifiable. And Grind brings up a point in the stream, and I agree with this. Trump is run on America first, and these things. And look, it's only a couple of weeks, but these things have a tendency to cause financial stress at home. And it is a midterm year, and the elections are coming. And historically, incumbent presidents don't do well in midterms, regardless of party. And there's There's a group of people who voted for Trump who are like, hey, we voted for you because we wanted you to drain the swamp and all of these things that felt like needed to be done, revise taxes to expose the corruption in Washington, et cetera. And this feels like to them, from what I hear, or what I read, and again,
well, there's a lot to unpack here because I think I think Trump sort of gets attacked unfairly on some of this stuff. And what I mean by that is, on the domestic stuff, there's a reason why it looks like, so one of the criticisms of Trump is like, you came in saying America first and you had all this big domestic agenda. And now here we are, engaged in these military conflicts. Well, first of all, I mean, one of the things that I would point out is part of that is because Trump is the commander in chief. And as the commander in chief, he has a lot of autonomous authority over foreign conflicts. And so that means he can kind of do what he wants. The problem on the domestic agenda is not Donald Trump or the like, if you're mad that they haven't implemented more of their agenda, the problem isn't with him or the administration. The problem is with the worthless Republicans in the Congress and the Senate. The Senate, you know how many confirmations are still waiting to be voted on? Like, what the hell are they doing? Like, I mean, the Senate Majority Leader was attending like a dog show for the senators the other day. Like, what the hell are you doing? Like, why don't you walk down to the Senate floor and take a vote on some of these nominees, right? And if you can't get these nominees through, communicate that to the nominee and to the president so that he can nominate somebody else for the spot. Democrats never have this problem. They never have this problem. They confirm everybody. They get people confirmed when they don't even have majorities. And the Republicans have they have majorities in the House and the Senate. They can't get anybody. They're not getting people confirmed. It's an absolute joke.
No, they have a far more politically ruthless political system playbook than the Republicans do. The Republicans, when it comes to, hey, we have power, let's exercise it, they're terrified.
When you have a bunch of people in the Republican Party who need to go, like Tom Tillis has already announced that he's going to retire, but he's going to retire at the end of his term. And what he's spending his entire rest of his term doing is just messing with the Trump administration and just withholding votes in exchange for things and trying to, no, just go away. If you're going to retire and you don't like the way that the party is going, retire. Just leave. Mitch McConnell is. I mean, I'm not saying this as to be insulting. Mitch McConnell is essentially brain dead. I mean, I don't know if you've seen the videos, but he's they're wheeling him around in a wheelchair and the guy looks like he's not even there anymore. But he's still there. Still, his office is still, getting him down to vote on things. He won't vote for anything that matters, but they're still wheeling him around. I mean, the Republican Party is just completely worthless. There is a Republican president who was elected by a significant margin. Okay, this was a blowout victory for Donald Trump. He was elected to, I mean, look at the deportation stuff. Why can't we get actions on these deportations? Here's the thing, there are sheriffs around the country in blue states. There are sheriffs who, when somebody gets arrested and there is an order out for them from ICE, right, that hey, if you detain this person, you need to report that to us, who are refusing to report it to ICE. In what world is this not treason? Right? This is a person who is not legally not legally allowed in the United States. Okay? So and they are committing crimes. That is the definition of a foreign invader. And you are aiding and abetting this foreign invader by basically letting them go and letting them live their life in the United States in defiance of a federal court order. This is not a functioning government. This is not a functioning society. So the thing is that I understand why people are frustrated by this. But these are not the problems of the administration. These are the problems of the feckless Republicans who have been elected to the legislature who don't do anything. And the other thing about the other thing about Iran is my baseline case is I think this is over by May 1st. I think it's over by May 1st. I don't think that we're talking about this. I mean, and May 1st might be long.
6 weeks.
Yeah. Because the United States is systematically destroying the military capabilities of Iran. Okay. Now, another way that this could be a failure is, look, if we go in there and we destroy their military capabilities and we delegitimize the regime, but nobody else pops up, well, we might end up with a failed state. Well, if Iran is a failed state, this is really, really bad because you've got a state of 90 million people in the Middle East that really has no leadership and is constantly at war with each other. Well, you don't really know how that's going to play out. That could be another failure. Okay. But again, the question is, what is the alternative? Okay, so if we are to believe the administration, and if you don't believe the administration, then we have to have a completely different talk. Okay, but if you are to believe the administration went to them, they tried to negotiate a solution. The Iranians turned them down. So in the midst of their war with Israel, the United States decided, you know what, we will participate in this war. We will show a decisive show of force. We will demonstrate to you that your military or that your missile defense system does not work against the United States of America. And you will realize that we have the ability to destroy a lot of your stuff. And you will see that because we can do that, you should come back and you should now negotiate with us. So then they go and they try to negotiate. And then what they're told is, nope, we're still doing it. We're still building the nuclear weapons. We're undeterred. And they called the Trump administration's bluff. And the Trump administration decided, okay, fine. Then we will just destroy your military capability. You can't be trusted. And look, if that is true, okay, let's assume this is true. Okay, this is the administration's position. Let's assume that it's true. If you actually carried out that strategic bombing a few months ago, and the response of the Iranians was, hey, we're going to keep building nuclear weapons. And then you attack them to destroy their military capacity. And what they do is they start launching missiles into all the neighboring states. That should further illustrate to you that these people are a legitimate threat to you and your allies, because they're just indiscriminately bombing people as punishment for the United States bombing them. So you think that that's a country that's not going to use nuclear weapons if they get one?
Oh, I think that's more. I think it's more than fair. I think it's more than fair to expect. Certainly, the regime that's in power today in Iran, if they had nuclear weapons that were capable to be launched against America or its allies, that they would launch them.
Well, and the other thing is, we also have to talk about this other aspect of this, is that this is the real boogeyman in the room, is that there's this entire business with Israel.
Yes.
Okay? And so there's this entire business with Israel, and it's hard to take anybody seriously who's talking about this. And the reason that I say that is there are a bunch of people who come out and they have what sound like legitimate concerns about Israel and Israel's kind of interference in the United States elections and these kinds of things. And my problem is that the vast majority of these people, it quickly progresses to well, I have some skepticism about Israel, to well, actually, I think Jews run the world and we got to stop them. That's what it quickly evolves to with a lot of these people. Now, okay, I will admit that that's somewhat unfair to certain people. Not everybody is like that, but there is a problem where you're seeing this. Okay, a guy, Joe Kent, worked in the he worked for the director of national intelligence. He put in his resignation yesterday. I think it was yesterday. Maybe it was the day before.
It was yesterday.
And he and he basically said that the United States has been coerced into this conflict by Israel, and that his wife had previously died in a conflict that was started by Israel. And what he was talking about is his wife was killed by ISIS. I don't really and I believe his wife was killed by ISIS in Syria. I don't really know what my point here is okay. Let's just start with basics. Do we really think that Donald Trump is being led around by the nose by Israel? First of all, I
don't know.
No, first of all, that doesn't seem
it's a narrative that the media
yes.
wants, the national media wants to establish
yes.
that narrative. And I think have to some degree with a certain amount of success.
And I think first of all, there's like a chicken and egg issue too. Is like what will happen is that people will say, well, he is being led around by the nose by Israel, and like proof of that is like look at the like there are Jewish donors who care a lot about Israel who've given a lot of money to Donald Trump. And so the implication is like they're giving him money and then he's giving them what they want. Well, maybe that's the case. Or maybe it's that they were like, well, I think that, Donald Trump is running against Kamala Harris and I care about Israel. Who do I think is going to do a better job, of being a good ally to Israel, Donald Trump or Kamala Harris? And I don't think that it takes a rocket scientist to be like, it's probably Donald Trump. Okay. So again, it's like, okay, are the people giving money to Trump because they figure he will be a better ally to Israel than Harris, or are they giving him money and then that's making him do what Israel wants? I think that this is a huge problem because, first of all, it violates things that we've observed. Yeah, I agree with that. For example, when Israel was at war with Iran and the United States stepped in and had that aggressive show of force, they said, that's it. We're done. Like Trump announced publicly after that strike, that's it. We're done. And then when Israel launched one more attack, Trump kind of flipped out about it in public on camera, and then it stopped. I think that Israel wanted to continue. I think Israel saw a weakness in the Iranian regime, and I think that they wanted to continue. I think without United States intervention, that conflict would still be ongoing. I think that Israel would still be fighting Iran, or would have wanted to continue fighting Iran, if not for the United States coming in and saying, nope, we showed them force. Okay. Like, you demonstrated that you could get inside the regime. We demonstrated that we have the military capacity to weaken their regime, and there's nothing that they can do about it. That's it. And that put an end to it temporarily for these negotiations. That doesn't sound like somebody who's being led by the nose. If he was being led by the nose, the conflict would have started there and it would have continued on. We would have done all of this stuff much sooner. The other thing is that, if you look at what the Trump administration has done elsewhere, you can see what they're like. Like the other complaint is like, if people are not blaming it on Israel, they're saying, oh, the neoconservatives are in charge again. I can tell you how you know that the neoconservatives are not in charge. When the Trump administration went and got Nicolas Maduro out of Venezuela, the neoconservatives wanted Trump to put this popular Venezuelan opposition leader in charge of the country. He refused. And he chose Delcy Rodriguez, the vice president of Venezuela, who herself seems pretty corrupt and pretty, maybe not as ideological as Maduro, but certainly as corrupt as Maduro. And the Trump administration was like, nope, we're going to leave her in charge. And that's a sign that the neoconservatives aren't in charge. It's also a sign that the Trump administration recognizes like the weakness of neoconservatism is thinking that you can go in and you can just rebuild these nations, that you can take out their leadership, you can install a new leader, you can make that leader somebody who's friendly to the United States, and then it's all over and then we're all happy. The problem is if you study the history of this, that's a temporary fix. You go in, you take out the old leader, you put in a friendly leader that angers a big section of the population. That section of the population spends a bunch of time organizing, raising money, building up, insurgency forces, and it ends up in like a civil war, or it ends up in a military coup or something. And the Trump administration said, like, we're not doing that. Like, our objective was to get Maduro out. We got Maduro out. Rodriguez will take over. The Venezuelans can sort this out. And the Trump administration's position on this is basically, yes, Delcy Rodriguez is incredibly corrupt. But you know what? Delcy Rodriguez saw that we could come get her in the middle of the night if we want to. And so she's going to have to learn that she can play ball with us. So you see what they're doing in these places is like they're not going in and doing regime change wars. Like they went into Venezuela and they did this. The other thing is like what they did in Venezuela and what they did in Iran. Like you can see how all of these things are related. We have had I would argue, okay, that post World War II, post World War II, we have had 3 presidents who had any idea what they were doing with foreign policy. 3: Eisenhower, Nixon, Reagan. That's it. Those are the 3.
All right.
Everybody else was, everybody else was out to lunch on foreign policy.
Starting with Kennedy, you're saying?
Yeah, everybody else was out to lunch. So the point, my point in bringing that up is that there were a lot of messes that were created. There were a lot of messes that were created in the post-World War II era. And they were created because of mistakes, right? These were mistakes made by people like Lyndon Johnson. These were mistakes made by people like Jimmy Carter. Okay. These were mistakes made by people like George W. Bush. All of these people contributed to huge mistakes. John F. Kennedy contributed to huge mistakes. The things that he got involved with in Cuba, there's tons of like revisionist history. John F. Kennedy was terrible on foreign policy. He just was. I know people want to believe that he was great because he was young and charismatic and he got assassinated, and there's all these theories about why he got assassinated. But the thing is that he was not great on foreign policy. He just wasn't. Okay. In fact, like the only reason that he beat Nixon is because he looked better on television. Like if you actually go back and that famous debate where he won the election, if you actually polled the people who listened to it on the radio, they thought Nixon won in a landslide. The people who saw it on television thought Kennedy won because he was just more telegenic.
He spent the day in the sun and had a tan, and Nixon looked amazingly pale. And Nixon's people did not put makeup on him. Kennedy's people did makeup. And Kennedy absolutely, if you go back and look at the pictures, looks younger and more vibrant, even though they're roughly the same age.
And so the thing is like part of what the Trump administration is trying to do is they're trying to reorient foreign policy to like a pre-World War I foreign policy, which is we are going to control the Western Hemisphere. We're going to try to stay out of the rest of the world's affairs as long as they stay out of the Western Hemisphere, right? Like that, we cannot be the policeman to the world. We can police the Western Hemisphere, and we can keep, and our objective is to keep, the Europeans are feckless, so, we don't really need to worry about the Europeans anymore, but like we can keep the Europeans and the Russians and the Chinese out of the Western Hemisphere. That should be our objective. The problem with that is that we have all of these conflicts around the world that have been created by the blunders of post-World War II foreign policy.
By the way, you've used the word feckless a couple of times. I'm sure there are people out there wondering what that means. I've pulled it up. It's someone weak, ineffective, incompetent, or irresponsible, originating from the 16th century Scots. It describes individuals lacking purpose or vitality. Common synonyms include inept and useless, while antonyms are effective or responsible.
I think I chose wisely. So if you think that if you recognize this, this kind of goes back to something we talk about all the time. In economics, what we always think about is like, what's the counterfactual? Okay. So like if we don't do X, what would happen, right? So for example, if you implement a particular policy, you never get to observe the world that would have occurred if you didn't implement the policy. Okay, so to do economic analysis, you can't just look at the world before the policy and after the policy and go, oh, that's the effect, because there's lots of other things going on also at the same time. So to try to figure out what the effect of the policy is, you have to try to isolate the effect of that policy from everything else that happened, right? You have to get the counterfactual. What would the world have looked like if we hadn't done this?
Okay.
I don't think that people are thinking about the counterfactual because everything in our society is broken. Every single thing in our society is broken. We have decades-long blunders in foreign policy. We have an international monetary system that is not working. We have a broken immigration system. We have an out-of-control bureaucracy. We have an out-of-control judiciary that, like Trump says, oh, we're going to deport this person who has deportation orders. And they're like, hold on, you can't do that. Why? Well, because I make some arbitrary ruling and I think that this person has to have due process, even after they've had due process. Like, so we have, so we have an ideological judiciary that stands in the way. Okay. We have widespread fraud going on at all levels of government. Okay. We already have talked, at length about the daycare scams. The new thing is that if you start paying attention to this, is that the new thing is that people have discovered that there are lots and lots of hospice scams. So there are now all of these places that are getting money for hospice care, and they're not actually a hospice. Like, if you show up at that address, it's like an apartment building,
an evacuated motel.
Yeah. And so these, so there's widespread fraud. There's widespread abuse. Okay. There are questions about the voting system. Okay. And one of the questions about the voting system is we keep being told that, like, oh, hey, like, illegal immigrants don't vote in elections. And then you read a story about an illegal immigrant being deported because they voted in an election and they've been convicted of a crime. And then as part of this is that now they're being deported by the Trump administration. You look at Minnesota and you see that they say, oh, well, that they made it possible for illegal immigrants to get driver's licenses. And then they made it so that a driver's license is a valid ID to show up and vote. And so that means that if you're an illegal immigrant and you just register to vote and you show them your ID, like your driver's license that they allowed you to get, which you never should have been allowed to get because you're here illegally, well, now you can vote. And who's going to stop you from voting? You're showing your ID. It has your picture on it. It has your name on it. That person is not allowed to ask you if you're a citizen. They're not allowed to check your birth certificate. They're not allowed to, ask you for your papers, right? So we have a voting system that is completely insane. Okay. We have a political party in this country, in the Democratic Party. We've talked about the feckless Republicans, but we have this other party, the Alternative Party, is the most left-wing ideological version of any party we've ever had in the United States. And so the point here is that everything is broken. Everything is broken. And I think that the problem is that for people that you and I interact with on a daily basis, even if they know that the system is broken, even if they know that all of these different aspects of the system are broken, for the most part, the people that we're interacting with on a daily basis, they don't see it in their life. This is not something that they see in their everyday life. And because they don't see it in their everyday life, there's no urgency to it.
Meaning because they're sheltered from it. They live in a different environment. Right.
And so you're not seeing this. It's like you might see it on television, but it's like it's happening on TV. Right? It's not the same as when you experience this at a deep fundamental level. Right? And so many things are broken, but the problem is there seems to be a lack of will to do anything about it. And the reason that there's a lack of will is the same reason that we haven't done anything about it in the past, is that it's going to be costly. It is going to be costly. It's going to be costly in either in terms of money or in terms of time or in terms of effort or in terms of things that you can't do because you're doing this other thing. There's going to be a cost. And because there is going to be a cost, people are like, well, do we really need to worry about it now? Like, I know it's a problem, but like, we have time to fix it. Like, we have time to fix it. And I think the issue is that what the Trump administration is doing is the Trump administration, and maybe this is a flaw, but the Trump administration seems to be trying to do as much as it possibly can to fix all of these things at once, right? If you look at what's going on with foreign policy, it certainly seems like what they're trying to do is they're trying to clean up the messes of the past. They're like, look, we've been dealing with Iran since the late 1970s. This has been a problem forever. We want to get out of that area. How in the world are we going to get out of that area? Because we can't just leave because the psychos are still there. They're still going to hate us just as much as they do tomorrow, or today, even if we leave there tomorrow. And so I think that part of what they're doing is saying, like, okay, they're weak right now. We have the opportunity to do this. Let's take out this military capacity. Let's wipe them out. Let's hope that they can that a more compliant or a more peaceful regime can take hold there, so that we can be away from that, and so that we can kind of withdraw ourselves from this. The other thing, and then if you look at it, like, it's the same sort of thing with Venezuela, is that previous administrations had allowed the Chinese and the Russians to kind of come into the Western Hemisphere, claim resources for themselves, start having foreign influence in these countries, and undermining the relationship of those countries with places like the United States. And so the Trump administration is going in and saying, nope, we're not going to let that happen anymore either. We're going to have to go in. We're going to have to do this. And you start to see that to some extent, it is paying dividends. It is paying dividends in the sense that Cuba has announced that essentially, like, they're going to undergo significant reforms, and they're in talks with the United States about, coming to terms of an agreement. Most likely because they've seen the military might of the United States, both in Venezuela and in Iran, and they're like, look, there's nothing, like, we're completely ill-equipped for this. We can't handle it.
Yeah.
And so the thing is that, look, that's not to say that all of this stuff is going to go well. It's not to say that all of this stuff is even a good idea. But the thing is like, they're actually going around and saying, hey, this stuff is a problem. This stuff is broken. We have to move on. We have to get out of these things, these conflicts that we've been in for decades, that never end, that we fight through all these proxy battles, that we spend countless billions of dollars a year on every single year. Like, let's just try to be done with it. And if they can succeed, that will be great. Now, if they fail, like, okay, that's very, very bad. But the thing is that at a certain point, you have to start doing things about the problems. If you don't start doing things about the problems persist and the problems get worse.
All right, we're running out of time. We're not going to get to everything. No way.
We're on that question 2.
Yeah, we're not going to get to question 3, I don't think. So Grind has a question.
Yep.
And Travis has a question, and I'm going to put them all together.
Okay.
He says, so what's the contingency plan if in your opinion, if the war doesn't end until the 4th of July, Labor Day? From the outside, it seems like the administration is operating as if a win is a 95% certainty, whatever a win looks like. And Travis says, people care about the economy first and foremost. I agree with that. That's true. Inflation is still high. Trump accounts for 26% of the national debt, he says. You can spin it all you'd like, but it's atrocious. And Matt says, it sounds weird to say, but the president has more power outside of the U.S. than inside it. He can handle the international stuff, so he is. Everything inside the country, someone gets in the way. Congress, judges, etc.
On the last point, yeah, that's 100% correct. Okay, so a couple things. First of all, on the economy, I mean, I think if you look at markets, like, oil prices are really high. The remaining markets.
Okay, so we can tie this into one of Ben's questions, right? Yeah. He says, how is the market only down roughly a few percentage points while oil is up 40%?
I think that actually tells you that the market expects this conflict to be short as well.
Okay.
I think that basically, like, that oil prices are up because there's, there are constraints on the supply of oil because the Iranians did what everyone would expect them to do, which is close the Strait of Hormuz, like, because that's the one thing that they have the capability to do. Of course, it's not clear whether they have the long-term capability to do that. They have the short-term capability.
And everyone knew that was going to happen.
Yeah, I mean, people...
The media narrative that, oh my God, this is some shocking thing, is no, it's not. I mean, if you looked at this with any degree of strategery, using a George W. Bush word, you knew that was the only counter that they had in the playbook. And of course, that was going to be the play that they would run. It's the only play in the book.
Yeah. And so the thing here is that, like, everybody since 1979 in the United States government had to be wargaming this out. Like, what happens if conflict breaks out in Iran? Like, they run these simulation schemes. They talk about these things. They plan these things. That has to have come up every year since 1979. I can't imagine that it hasn't.
Well, number one, what will happen?
Yes.
Well, they'll close the. Yeah.
I mean, I do think that one thing to be concerned about is, I do think this is a conversation for another time, but I do think that another thing to be concerned about is drone warfare, because I think drone warfare does this thing that our military might is very is powerful and impressive, but it's also expensive. And drones can the cost of creating a drone that we have to blow up, we're going to spend more money blowing it up than they spent on the drone. And it's not even going to be close. Like we're going to spend 10 times more money to blow up the drone than they paid for the drone, which makes things difficult, right? But that's a whole separate conversation. About the economy, I mean, I think that when you see oil prices are going up because there are actual constraints on the supply of oil. It's harder to get oil to the market, and because it's harder to get oil to the market, you're going to have higher prices, right? The demand for oil hasn't changed, the supply has fallen. So given that, and to the extent that it hasn't fallen, it's just become more costly to get it to people, in which case, oil prices go up. And so the oil price is reflecting the shortage of oil. The fact that other markets are not, collapsing seems to me to be a sign that people expect, because the oil market is very, very much it's very much focused on the here and now. It's very much focused on current supply, current demand, whereas the stock market is much more focused on expectations of future earnings. Okay, and so if you expect this to be short, well, you don't expect the earnings of companies to be affected that much at all. Like you don't expect the consumer to be hurt that hard that they're going to cut back on spending such that it's going to bleed into earnings. So if you look at markets are essentially telling you that oil prices are up because it's more costly to get the oil to the market. People are the people who the people who buy oil, like us, right? The consumer, like it's going to be more costly for us in the short run. But essentially what the market is saying is like, they don't expect that to actually bleed into like, they don't expect that to affect consumer behavior enough that it's going to affect earnings to the point that like these companies are going to do substantially worse in the future, so that, prices aren't going down. And so I think that the market is actually saying, "Hey, this is a temporary thing." They expect it to also be very short term, and I think they have to expect it to be very short term, because if you were expecting this to last another year, well, then you clearly would believe that this is going to eat into consumer spending, because consumers are going to be spending a lot more of their income on things like gasoline,
right?
So they're going to have less money left over for other things. On the other point, I mean, on the national debt point, I mean, this kind of ties into the last point, right? Is like, there's this game that people play about like who's causing the national debt, right? Like who's to blame for the national debt? Everyone. Every single person that you have sent to Washington, D.C. is responsible.
Yes.
Like this is not like a Joe Biden thing. It's not a Donald Trump thing. It's not an Obama thing. I mean, it's not them alone. It is them collectively.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
But it's also all of your congressmen, all of your senators. I mean, this is the thing. Again.
And it's an American thing. We don't want to tighten our purse strings.
Well, exactly. What we are seeing is, again, all of this stuff has to be fixed. It has to be fixed. We have to fix the immigration system. We have to fix the international monetary system. If we do not fix the international monetary system, the debt problem is going to continue until it forces the United States' hand. And maybe you and I will get lucky. Maybe our children will get lucky. Maybe our grandchildren will get lucky, and they'll never have to deal with it. Because maybe the country can kick the can down the road, or events will happen to the point where we don't have to worry about this. But the thing is until we fix the system, that system creates a scenario where debt is cheap. And if debt is cheap, politicians are going to borrow cheaply to do the thing that they want to do.
Yes.
And as long as they have the incentive to borrow because it's cheap, they're going to borrow, because it's cheaper to borrow and kick the can down the road than it is to raise taxes or cut spending. But you have to, but everything is broken. It's not just like, but that's the thing, is that you can't just say, because I see this all the time. Like people,
well, I mean, look at the answer on immigration from Republicans. The Republicans who are against it. Why are they against it? Well, who's going to do the work? Like look, and we're going to, who's going to come in and work at the hotels, and who's going to get out in the farm and the fields? I mean, if we do this, one of two things is going to happen. Either it's not going to get done, or we're going to have to pay Americans a lot more. We're going to have to pay them a real wage. And then if they work and we're not giving them unemployment anymore, we're not giving them welfare anymore, well, they might not vote. The whole system is screwed up.
Well, and you see this explicitly because Donald Trump will come out and he'll say, like, we got to deport all of these people. And then he'll specifically say things like, well, I'm talking to, he talks to like some wealthy, Republican donor who runs a big like agricultural company. And then he's like, well, some people we're going to have to let them stay. Somebody's got to pick the peaches, and it's like and so
I picked peaches 2 summers of my life. It is work.
And see, that's a job that an American will do for the right wage.
Well, now looking back on it, I think the overwhelming majority of the people that were on my crew would be very concerned about ICE showing up at Mitchum's peach orchard there in Ruston. I think when at the end of the shift, when ICE was there, they would probably not be comfortable. Me and Chuck Jones, I think the two of us would have been maybe the only two who would have said, you know what, we're good.
But so this is the problem, though, is like, okay, because people ask me all the time, what do we do about the national debt? Okay, well, on some level, it's really simple, right? You can do one of 3 things. You can increase taxes, you can cut spending, or you can inflate it away. Okay? First of all, nobody wants to cut taxes, or nobody wants to raise taxes.
No.
Right? Nobody wants to cut spending. Okay? No, there are people who want to cut spending, but then when you get down to like, oh, this is what we're going to cut, then people are like, oh, no, not that.
Yeah.
Not that. No, we can't cut that. Right?
Fair enough.
The third thing is then, okay, we can inflate it away. Well, we can kind of inflate away the debt, but we can't inflate away lots of our problems. Because if you look at the liabilities that we owe to people, a lot of the liabilities that we owe to people is we owe them Social Security. You can't inflate away Social Security obligations because Social Security payments are tied to inflation. So they take the inflation statistics and then they update your payment for inflation every single year. So if you just create 10% inflation, that makes it easier for you. Like if you just print a bunch of money to pay off your debt, and prices go up by 10%, that helps you to pay off your debt, but it doesn't actually help you to make those Social Security payments because they're just going to go up by 10% next year. The other thing is like another big obligation is Medicare. Okay, well, Medicare is a promise in real terms, right? Like you're promising people cancer treatments and hip replacements and that kind of thing, right? Like, so inflation is going to cause the prices of those things to go up. You're just reimbursing doctors for those treatments. And so if everything just goes up by 10%, well, then Medicare is just going to spend 10% more on medical care. So that's not even the typical solution historically was like, if you couldn't raise taxes and you couldn't cut spending, you'd resort to inflation. Inflation might help us to get rid of some of the debt, but then it's not going to help with the trajectory of the spending. It's not going to help with the trajectory of future debt, right? The other thing is that, we have an out of control bureaucracy, right? The federal government is insanely large.
Yes.
It's insanely large. These people like cannot be fired. You can't just come in and say, hey, we want to reduce the size of this agency or something like that. Like you have to have an actual reason to get rid of people. And like wanting to save money is like not an acceptable reason in Washington. But then on top of that, like you just have massive amounts of fraud. You have massive amounts of fraud that are going on. And this massive amount of fraud, there's no incentive to get rid of it because there are so many people profiting from it.
Yes.
The fraud is not like, I think like people look at this and they just think, oh, like people are taking advantage of the government. No. Like my child, they are not taking advantage of the government. There are people in the government who are doing this stuff in order to facilitate the fraud because then it feeds back to them so that they maintain their political power.
Yes.
Right. So this is all a game. Look up just for fun in your spare time. Any listener who wants to do this for fun, get Google News alerts on Gavin Newsom's wife. Just get Google News alerts on his wife. what you will find is that like this woman exists purely on the basis of receiving money from the government, which she then spends on herself. Okay. Now, how does she do that? How does she accomplish these things? And what I am constantly stressing is that everything is broken. It has to be fixed, but we are stuck. And we are stuck because we have a Republican Party that does nothing. Like what they do is like they just react to what the other side is doing. So the other side is actually organized. The other side has a massive public relations campaign to go out and change the minds of people, right? Like they have infiltrated every aspect of our society, from our schools all the way on up. And then they are feeding these people this garbage information, this ideology, and they're changing hearts and minds every single day because they have worked their way into the institutions. They're shaping public opinion. They're pushing constantly to the left. They constantly have more and more ideas that are pushing further and further to the left. What do Republicans do? They wait for the left to come up with some crazy idea, and then they react to it. Like, so in California, they're like, we need a wealth tax. And then what is the Republican answer to this? Is wealth taxes are a bad idea. Yes, I agree. But you know what? You might want to ask yourself how we got to the point where this colossally stupid idea is like incredibly popular, right? Where this colossally stupid idea, it has the backing of all of these people that you would expect to kind of say, yeah, you know, I support your goals, but this is the wrong way of going about it. No, this is a sign. It is a sign that the left is actually successful at what they do, and the right doesn't have any idea what they're doing. The right has to build. They have to start building things. They have to start trying to shape public opinion. They have to create a counter elite. They have to create they themselves have to work their way into these institutions. They have to take them back over. And then you need people. I don't know if people know this. Republicans don't know this. Democrats know this. So this is a lesson for all the Republicans out there. I want to explain this to you. Winning elections is not winning. Winning elections is not winning. Winning elections is the means to winning.
Yes.
Once you win the election, you must exercise the power that you have. And yes, I understand if you are on the right, you are probably pretty skeptical of people who wield power. You are very skeptical of using power because you're afraid that your opponents will use it in bad ways. But the answer to that is to remove power from your enemies. It is not to not exercise power when you have it and allow your enemies to exercise power when they have it. And I'm specifically saying enemies because I'm telling you, on the left has been completely taken over. They've been completely taken over by hardline ideologues.
Yes.
We are not having friendly debates about whether the tax rate should be 10% or 15% or 20%. That's not the debate that we're having anymore. We are literally having a debate where people are trying to actively steal your wealth and take it from you. We are now having we have one side that recognizes that believes, regardless of whether it was true, it's true now. And it's true because they believe it, that there is this existential conflict at play, that like they believe that they are going to bring out this, they believe that their policies, that their ideas are going to bring about heaven on earth. They believe that they are creating a much better society, and that you mean backwards people are just standing in the way. And don't you realize that if not for you, we would live in a much better society?
A utopia.
Yes.
They believe in a socialist land, essentially borderless land called utopia, where everyone has enough of the pie to live happily, but never actually own pie. Just enough of the pie to live happily, and the elites, the powers that be, will have basically everything they want, and they will give you just enough that you'll be happy. You'll be happy and own nothing. That is essentially what they want.
It is.
They're in the process of getting it.
It's economically illiterate. Okay?
Yes.
It is anti-Christian. Christians do not believe in the perfectibility of man. They do not believe in the perfectibility of man. the fundamental Christian belief is that all men are flawed. All men are flawed. All men are sinners. Okay. And that only God.
It's pretty much been established.
And that only God can forgive.
Yes.
Okay. And so their society is, it's economically illiterate. It is, it's anti-Christian. Okay. And it is an existential crisis to you because you are standing in their way. So it's also politically dangerous, because if you believe that you are bringing out, if you genuinely believe that you are bringing forth a utopian society, all means are on the table if somebody stands in your way of producing that utopia. This is not new. We have experienced movements like this throughout human history. There have been movements just like this where they have this belief that they're going to bring heaven on earth, that they're going to produce a much better society, that if we would all just shut up and listen to them, that this is what we would get. But this is why our politics is so crazy. It's crazy because this is an existential conflict for them. All means are justified. And when I say that they're anti-Christian, you see it in society, right? Why are they attacking the family? Why are they attacking why are they creating questions like, what is a woman, right? Like, why are they promoting the most dysfunctional and deviant behavior at every turn? Why are they exposing children to those things, right? Like, why are they doing this? They're doing it because they have to undermine those foundations. Even if you yourself are not a Christian, you live in a Christian society. So whether you know it or not, like, you are a fish swimming in water, whether you notice the water or not. And that water is Christianity. And so your moral basis, even if you're not Christian, is probably fundamentally Christian because you are surrounded by a Christian society. So like the morals that you learn growing up are morals informed by Christianity because that's what everyone around you believes. And so their only way to start eroding this is they have to systematically go through society and they have to tear things down. This is why they attack Christianity. This is why they attack fatherhood. This is why they want to tear down statues. This is why they want to do all of these things. It's all on this basis of you have to tear down things so that you can replace them with something new. And that's what they're systematically trying to do. And as a result of that, they have been remarkably successful at doing this behind the scenes for decades. For decades, they've been working themselves into the schools, into the government bureaucracies, into every aspect of your daily life. And they have integrated themselves into these things. And then they thought that once they integrated themselves into these things, then it would be easy because then you could control the levers of power and you could wear the legitimacy of these jobs and these government agencies and things like that. You could just, you just put on the skin suit of these jobs, of these agencies, and you would have the legitimacy of those agencies, even though what you want to do is radically different than what they were set up to do. And they thought that would be easy. The problem is what they've discovered is there's a whole bunch of people out there, okay, who actually don't want this, who don't want to go along with it, who look at it and say, nope, that's not what I want out of society. That's not what I want. That's not my view of what makes a better world. And so now they have enough of the levers of power that they feel like they should be able to implement all this stuff. But there are these mean, evil people in the way who won't let them, who vote for people like Donald Trump. And those people have to be punished. And those people, they have to, and those people are going to have to be dealt with because they need to bring out this new society. And these people are in the way. And the problem is that march through the institutions, that's why everything is broken. Because this doesn't work. What they are trying to implement will not work on its own terms. It will not work. And this is why everything is broken, because you've had this march through the institutions and they've eroded the legitimacy of all of these institutions. They've eroded this legitimacy because they've come in and they have hijacked the purpose of these institutions and they have diverted it to their own purpose. And in doing so, they've harmed the legitimacy of those institutions. This is one reason why you can't get any legitimate news and commentary on what's going on right now. It's so impossible to get any commentary because who do you believe? Who's your go-to source? That's by design.
Yes.
It's by design that you don't know who to go to when you're looking for the truth. When you're looking for information, you don't know who to go to because they have so fundamentally destroyed these institutions from the inside that now you do not know who you can trust. You do not know what you can believe. You do not know what is going on. It's a demoralization campaign. It's one giant demoralization campaign. Because what they want to do is, this is a basic Marxist tactic. The Marxist tactic is that you spend a long period of time just demoralizing society. You just demoralize them. You just make them think that everything is hopeless, everything is wrong, everything is going bad. And then you wait. Because once society becomes sufficiently demoralized, you wait and you look for a time that you can seize that opportunity, and you can seize that opportunity to destabilize society. Because if you can destabilize society and then you can bring about chaos in society, people will become desperate for a solution. They'll become desperate for a leader. They'll become desperate for anybody who can put a stop to what is happening. And then you can come in and then you can follow that destabilization with normalization. Oh, here's the new person who comes in and like, I'm going to make things better. I'm going to make things normal. You're not going to have to worry about this stuff anymore. And that is how you usher in a completely radically different society. But it starts with demoralization. And that's what we see every single day. Every day, that's what we see is like, it's just massive demoralization. Every single day, you're just finding out more and more that, about what is broken. You don't know who to trust. You don't know where to go. You don't know what to do. And this is why the right needs to wake up, and they have to create their own parallel institutions. They have to build things on their own, and they have to create a genuine counterbalance to this vast movement that has a decades-long head start.
All right, we're not going to get to the rest of this. It's just not happening. But Ben, great questions. We'll touch on this next time, though. So these are questions we're not addressing now. He wanted to know our thoughts on the Civil War and the Trump MAGA base. I don't know if you followed this at all. This Tucker Carlson, Megyn Kelly, what is her name? Candace Owens. Been a fracture between them and the administration on the war in Iran. Also seems there's a fight between these same groups on who really knew what Charlie Kirk thought about Israel, about Iran, frankly, about who killed Kirk, who knew Kirk was going to be killed, who knew he was being targeted. And then the other question was, is the industrial military complex the strongest group out there? George Bush landed on the aircraft carrier in May of 2003. Since then, we still remain in conflicts 23 years later and no end in sight now. So we'll talk about those two things and whatever else comes up in the next couple of weeks. So thanks to everybody for being in the stream. Thanks to Ben and everyone else who submitted questions, Grind and others. Appreciate all of you guys. For Josh Hendrickson, I'm Neal McCready. Until next time, take care.